You're listening to the Nerdverse Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Anton, and coming up, I'm joined by my dear friend, Abby, to discuss her origin story with anime, growing up with anime, and what it's been like having all the different stories in her life and how it's kind of formed her identity and how she sees the world and her perspectives. We get into what it's been like having anime conventions in our lives. Fanime in particular being that point of celebration every single year, how it's felt like home, and how we've been able to grow our anime fandom and see people in real life and, exchange ideas. I think it's something that we sorely miss. I think it's something that a lot of people sorely miss. And, as the world starts to open up again, we are both looking forward to a time when we can start to see people in the real world again and kind of experience all of the different stories and celebrate with people in real life. Because I do feel like that is just an element that has heightened and accentuated all of the wonderful things that anime has done for us throughout our lives. So yeah, just excited to get into it. Coming up, Abby joins the show to explore the many worlds of anime on the Nerdverse Adventures. Joining the show to discuss her origin story as a lifelong anime fan, my dear friend for about 10 years now. We met in our adult lives, but it kind of feels like we've been family for so long. Someone who's always accompanied me at all the local anime conventions and has introduced me to her world of cosplay and people and conventions. The one and only Abby. Welcome to the show, Abby.
Thank you for having me. I know it's kind of weird that you call me Abby because I don't actually think my online persona I've ever put my name out there. But for anybody that might be listening, um, I'm Abby, otherwise known, probably not known. But if you do know me, maybe Sugar Shuriken on Twitter. Ooh.
Yes, her anime cosplay persona, Twitch streamer, influencer, all of those things. Yeah, well, this is the real person. We have Abby. Yeah, so with anime, it's been a lifelong journey and exploration of stories for the both of us. But both of us have very different paths to get there, I would say. We did meet in our adult lives. But like I said, it does feel like family, always talking to you and always catching up on anime and going to anime conventions when that was still a thing, specifically Fanime. That feels like spring break, that feels like home every year, and we haven't had that for 2 years, but we do hope to have that back, and we hope to go to that together in 2022. But okay, go ahead.
God willing, like for real.
Yeah, geez, I hope things start to open up. But let's have everyone get to know you a little bit. So, I know your origin story a bit. There's still some blind spots for me, but how did anime make it into your life? Where did it all begin? And what were your first memories of anime growing up?
Gosh, anime, I can't remember really a time in my life without it, but I do know that I never labeled it as anime growing up. I didn't know what anime was, and this might kind of date us. I know you and I are the same age, but for people listening or people watching, back in my day, there was no easy access to anime. Um, and there was no label for it, at least from my experience and um, who I was around, my environment. I knew what we know as anime today as that time slot after school on public television where the cool cartoons would come on, right? And I would race home and I knew that this block from 3 to 4:30 was like the block that I could not miss. And that was Sailor Moon and Pokemon. So that was my first, I guess. Oh, Sailor Moon, Pokemon, and Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball, right? And that was my first real, I guess, labeling that these cartoons were not the same as other animations. And it kind of opened, well, it was the gateway, I guess. It was the gateway to more. But back at that time, as a young tot, um, that's all I had. And there was no streaming service. There was VHS tapes if you were so lucky to find something that was not bootleg at like Ranch 99 or like those like Asian markets. So I never even labeled it as anime. It wasn't until much, much later that I realized that this was something more, that this medium for storytelling existed like on the other side of the globe, which again, to kind of date you and I, sorry, there was no global, like there was no like globalism at that time. I lived with my phone, not even cell phone, and pager and public television. So that was my first introduction to anime.
Um, don't worry. I've already mentioned in a previous episode how we grew up with TV as the only way to watch anything. I talked about Spider-Man, the original animated series, and somehow I was able to watch all 5 seasons of that broadcasted live or reruns. And it goes very similar with anime. Pokemon, Sailor Moon, rushing home to make sure I watch it. Do you remember the days where you would either be sick or have off and you'd catch like the shows that came on an hour before it? And you were like, what is this treasure? Um,
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what is this? Why are they showing? Oh, like, is this on the guide? And I would just go through like the physical TV guide to say like, oh, like, what is this show? And then you would see it says like, gosh, what's the language that they put there? They're like, oh, like public TV slot. Or something. It doesn't even name the show. It's like, oh, like paid airtime or something like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's great.
yeah, they leave it open because they would either air anime or they would just have it open for anything that they needed to broadcast that day. The one show I remember always coming on well before I got home, but would catch occasionally is Ronin Warriors.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was one of the OG ones, and I'm like, wow, this is super cool. So I never like completed the entire series, in the sense that I'd always watch like episodes here and there and miss a couple episodes, eventually get to the end. It's like, okay, that's the end of the series. That's cool. Never put it together. So my imagination was like, was just running wild of like filling in the gaps. And I feel like that is how we kind of grew up with watching these long form television series, specifically anime, right? Where we just don't have, we didn't have the same access. We couldn't have things on demand. We didn't have streaming. The internet just started. And it goes to everything you said about this era of evolving globalization, right? And I wanted to get your take on what that meant to you growing up and how you saw those shifts actively happen throughout your life, starting from elementary, going into middle school when you're being a little bit more cognizant of the world around you, and then high school where people are saying, "Oh, this is anime." And you coming to that realization, it's like, oh, this was anime. I thought it was just really cool cartoons with people that kind of look like me. What was that experience going through each one of those phases growing up?
Oh my gosh, so this might sound like completely sad. And you know a little bit about like my growing up and stuff and probably maybe even the area, but just for everybody else, like I was not a rich kid and I was not a happy home kid either. So being connected to people, like let alone like any sort of like globalization or connections outside of my little bubble, even till now, I'm an introvert. It was just like non-existent. There was no speech to be had because I would reach for, I would turn to or look for anime and then kind of like hunker down by myself and just like pick it apart, you know? So it was like a very one-on-one relationship, me and anime. And if I had seen somebody in elementary school, because at that time, so again, to kind of like preface the story, at that time, anime, I guess, was cool because that was the new thing on TV that everybody was watching. So it was okay. It was okay to like it. And if I had seen somebody say like, "Oh my gosh, like my favorite sailor is Sailor Mars," or like whatever, I'm like here in the corner, like, oh my gosh, like, oh, that's my favorite sailor too, and then quietly like walk away, like yes, right. Um, and even in high school, it started like you said, it started to shift. So that was like elementary, and then you go into high school, and I went to like the only high school that was in my city. So there's like a ton of people, and there were things that were very cool and uncool. And the people who liked anime, and mainly at that time, again, just small selection, just DBZ and maybe Ronin Warriors, and I think, oh, like Hamtaro, right?
I
Was
think
coming up.
Gundams was also probably in that
Oh
sphere,
man,
right?
Gundams,
Gundams, anything
yeah,
mechs,
Gundams
anything
was there.
robots. Yeah.
But I just my 2 cents on that. People like to build, but nobody watched. At least from my experience, people were not watching. They were only wanted to build the model kits. But anyway, in high school, it was there was like a very big separation because the people who really liked anime liked it with like their whole body. They copied the hair, they copied the poses. They were just like enamored, and the people that didn't like it, they conversely did not like it with a passion, right? So the word weeb didn't exist yet, but I imagine that that was the vibe that they were projecting towards anime lovers, like, oh, what the hell, what are you guys doing? So in high school, I just kind of shut off because there's just like a lot more going on there, but I would still continue to watch, by myself, and just kind of escape, and have something that's for me that I enjoy. Then college came, and I would still watch, but now we had bookstores like Borders and Barnes and Noble, and lo and behold, there's a manga section, and the DVD section has anime. So, yeah, I think that was probably the next big step to my discovery, or my entry into the anime world, because now we've graduated from searching TV guides to now plopping myself on the carpet at Barnes and Noble, trying to figure out what I will purchase, because I did purchase, support your creators. I did purchase, and then look at DVDs and how many editions were out. I started actively searching for series that were interesting that I should invest my time in.
So you mentioned that there was a big separation between what was cool and uncool, and I feel like that is a tale as old as time, right? Where I mean,
Yeah.
every generation will say that they've experienced some version of bullying, whether that was the '80s with the nerds, the computer nerds, and then the '90s, like us, anime and cartoons, and then in the early 2000s, I actually don't know anymore. I kind of blacked that out because I think I was more cognizant at that time because middle school and high school, that was me. And then 2010s, no clue anymore. So I don't know what the kids are going through, but it does seem to shift in what people find interesting and kind of types of conversations. All this to say, kind of circling back to where we are today. Not well, I guess it's a little bit of a take, but it does feel like it's nerds bullying other nerds online, where you either love Star Wars or not my Luke, or you love Marvel or Disney's controlling everything. DC's terrible, DC's awful. It's like, but aren't we all kind of part of the same like universe here? So it's just kind of funny how bullies in them of themselves have evolved. But I think the way that you approach your fandom and it being a little bit more private and personal to you, is a different way to escape things, like you mentioned. And I do want to circle back to Barnes and Nobles and Borders, and that being the point of accessibility. Um,
Oh,
Take me through that, going through the treasure trove of books and media and just, things to enrich your brain and the types of stories you were looking for within anime. How was that like the first, I don't know, those formative years of your life? And then how did that evolve into finding other means, other places like conventions, to purchase and to kind of explore different stories?
so um, the Borders and Barnes and Noble time, I was in college, and gosh, I don't think any of my in real life friends are gonna like really look at this because they already know I was a very different person then than I am now, and I've always been myself. I've always been how I am now. Um, but I think I had masked it better before. And not that I intentionally masked it, it's just that as a means of survival, I guess, you just have to uh kind of put on the happy face or the mask to fit in, maybe. I guess is the more general way to say it. So that's what I did. And when I would go to Barnes and Noble and Borders, I would pretty much scan all the rows of manga. And I didn't know, again, like we grew up in a time where there weren't like anime reviews so readily available, or there were no content creators. Okay.
There was no Wikipedia, there was no
There's
YouTube,
no,
there was no
yep,
Twitter. Nope.
nothing. There was nothing unless like you knew somebody that you could talk to that told you this cool thing. Like you just had to go out and forage on your own. So what I would do is I would go through Barnes and Noble or Borders, and I would look for art through the manga like that like would stand out to me, and I would just buy first volumes of everything. And then I would see, like, okay, well, let's see how this story goes. And I know I'm going to get to it because I'll make time for it. Like, whatever, procrastinating, but that's probably another story. But like, I would go through it, and if I liked it, then I would start to pick up more books that of the same genre. So like more popularly like shoujo beat, right? I was a big romance anime fan, and of course Shonen Jump, and then all the other publishers, and I would just basically the art would catch my eye first. Then I discovered Toonami on Adult Swim. So I have gone through like this really messy breakup, and I got with my boyfriend, who's now my husband, but we would have our like little dates or whatever, and your parents don't want you to be like out late, right? Because it's like, oh, what is people gonna think of you? So of course, and I have my boyfriend come over, and what do? You watch TV. So Adult Swim would be on, and Toonami would be on, and there I discovered Death Note. And Death Note would air out like really, really late at night, like maybe like 10, 11, like close to midnight. They would give you two episodes, and I know you probably have watched it, but these cliffhangers are like not ones you can easily live with, right? So when the episode would end at like, 1 in the morning, my boyfriend and I would be like, okay, wait, can you like pull that back up on Comcast? What episode does that say? Because in the summary, it tells you episode like 13 or whatever. And then we went to Borders the next day and said, do you have volume 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever of Death Note? And we literally called, there was I think, what episode was it? It was like the Mikami episodes where there's the guy, and he had put the briefcase in the safe deposit box, and it had ended, and we're like, wait, what? So um we had to go find that next episode. So we called Fry's, we called Barnes and Noble, we called Borders, and we literally drove all around the Bay Area just to get as many Death Note DVDs that were out so we could just watch it in one sitting. And at that point, I knew that I had a problem.
You didn't have a problem. You were very resourceful. You found a way to get it done. That is how I would describe that. No, I think it speaks a lot to that period in time. I think it's a very nice timestamp that Toonami provided such an amazing service for so many kids growing up in the 2000s. Because yes, I think pirating is not good, kids. However, that was, I think, the primary way a large portion of kids growing up and even young adults at that point were finding anime. And I will tell you, not from any personal experience, but it's also very harmful to computers. It's harmful for a number of reasons. And the fact that you went out of your way to use Toonami as your starting point and then go to find the actual physical media and then to be able to watch and finish those stories speaks volumes to, I think, the way that you process the world and what you find important and valuable. And to me, I mean, it's kind of also fits with Death Note and the theme of this idea of, well, never mind. It's something a little bit darker that I won't go into. But with that said, and Toonami, I do think that is a great timestamp of where we were at that point in time in history. And also to shout out for the degenerate lifestyle of starting Toonami at say midnight, and then sometimes it ends all the way at 4 a.m. With like Space Ghost Coast to Coast. I remember it was like the late night ones, like after anime hours.
Yep, and then or like Boondocks or Samurai Jack would play, and you're like, okay, it's done.
Yeah. So you mentioned Death Note, and you mentioned another. You mentioned just going through a myriad of titles growing up. Like buying Volume 1 and then having that be your starting point. Shoujo Beat and Shonens. What were some of your other favorite titles that you clung on to and that really made an impact as far as your anime identity?
Oh, geez. Uh, in like back then or now?
Both. As you were going through your journey of finding different stories to follow, what were some of your favorites, and then which ones have stuck with you to this day?
So back then, I was like a really big fan of Fruits Basket. I thought that it was so cute, and then um, I that was my first introduction to like the Bishonen, right? Like those attractive attractive dudes, and then storytelling, like this fantasy life, and then it quickly turned dark, and I was like, oh, okay, hey, author, what are you redoing here? I had read comics, so I was a big Batman fan growing up, and like those comic books were more easily accessible to me. And with like those superheroes, you're kind of prepared. You're mentally prepared to uh see and process certain types of storylines, right? Like there's a hero, there's a villain, and I know that going into. So I know some bad things are going to happen. With Fruits Basket, I was like, okay, well, this looks so fluffy and sparkly. The art is so cute, and it starts off with like the zodiac animals and all these things. And I think what I'm getting is going to be just very lighthearted, slice of life kind of fantasy. And as I went through it, I said, holy crap, like there's abuse and torture. Like what is happening? Um, and then that kind of led me to believe that, hey, these manga have are more than just like kind of like fluffy, easy to read comics. They really pack a punch because they're delivering deep, heavy stories with like the most fluffiest line work that you can see. And it's just it throws you off, but in a way, at least for me, it made it easier to consume. Because normally certain themes, if I know that it's going to be dark, if I know if the story is going to be um maybe like triggering. And at that time, I didn't even know the word triggering. Triggering is like just like a recent term. But back then, if I knew that something would be gory or something would kind of like hit the feels really hard, I would put it down if I knew I couldn't handle it because I'm kind of like a sensitive person. Um, and books like Fruits Basket really caught me off guard, but I couldn't stop reading because it was easy to it was easy to keep reading because the delivery, while it was like hard content, the images were kind of soft. So I'd say Fruits Basket stuck with me. I liked reading Initial D. I did watch it I did watch it on like some, I forgot where I seen it. It must have been like KTSF, one of those after school kind of things. And then I ended up finding a manga somewhere and I really enjoy that. And during the time that we grew up, it was very fast and furious time, right? Like street racing was like a big deal. So I thought it was pretty cool to read the storyline. And then of course, like you have like your staples that are just nostalgia, like Dragon Ball, Naruto, Ranma 1.5, and Inuyasha. Um, Moving forward, I guess, um, there have been animes that have really been with me as an adult. And maybe it's like another topic. Maybe that's another topic, but I think that I use various animes, to kind of chronologicalize my life. Like I know that when Oron High School happened, that I was in this position in my life and it wasn't good. You know what I mean?
How was those stories? How have they been reflective or instructive of how you got through some of those difficult times in your life?
So, if I can touch on Oron High School Host Club, so it's kind of a tongue twister. So I always pull back, or I always bring this anime up whenever anybody talks to me about, what is your favorite? It's not my favorite. I think the word favorite has like a lot of power. Um, so I don't really have a favorite. It's more like, at this point in time in your life, like what were you watching? What were you watching at that time? Um, Oron High School Host Club was my talk me down from the ledge anime. And so unexpectedly, because you've seen it, right? Like it's not it's definitely not at first glance what you would think would be that. Like that's like, oh, please rescue me, and somebody tosses you Oron. Like, no. But for me it was. So at the time that that anime came out, I was going through a quarter life crisis. And you probably might be familiar with this because we were working together at that time. Um, but during that time, I was just so angry and disappointed at adult life. I felt that everybody has graduated. I had this adult job. I had my relationship, and like supposedly like I've arrived, right? You've arrived at this point that your parents and family like want you to be at. Yet this adult life, it seemed like I was existing to bear the brunt of everybody's bad stuff. Like, oh, at work, like, oh, you should know better, or like, or you know better, be the bigger person, right? Be the bigger person. And I'm like, but wait, this guy's acting like a douchebag. Like, I'm trying to bring awareness so that doesn't affect our office or whatever. And they're like, no, you're the bigger person. You're the bigger person. Just let it go. And then, like in relationships, it's kind of like the same thing. Well, that person's acting up, or that person is being so offensive, or whatever. It's just like rubbing me the wrong way, and I'm calling you out, and like, no, 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 like don't call them out. That's just how they are. you're the bigger person, you know, and I just kept hitting these like walls. And throughout your college life, or maybe just your life in general, people tell you that if you want to grow, you put yourself in situations outside of your comfort zone. Well, I was very uncomfortable. I was very uncomfortable, and nothing seemed to be happening. Like it just, everybody was like, well, Abby, okay, like, you're so great, take care of it. Oh, but don't take care of it like that. Make sure that they're not taking accountability. And I was just pissed. Like, so I felt like I had done all these things right to get to this point where everything is political now, or everything is like, spare somebody else's feelings, but you can take it because you've developed this, I don't know, tolerance or something. I was just pissed. So one day, well, during my one of like those like dire moments, I was scrolling through Netflix, and I just wanted to put something on because I was at the like, kind of like, my last straw. And I found Oron, and I was like, forget it, I'm just gonna put it on, let's listen to something. The art is super cute, right? Like, and if you notice this theme with me, I'm like, oh, super cute, okay. Right. So I put it on, and if you don't already know, Oron High School Host Club is about this poor girl that gets into an affluent high school on a scholarship. And she gets there, and she ends up breaking something really expensive, and she has to work to pay off her debt, while all these rich kids kind of like ridicule her for being poor, when she really has the brains, but she was just born into a situation that she couldn't control, right? So the first episode, the character's name is Haruhi. She she's a female, but she presents herself not intentionally as a male, but she just doesn't doll up, so people don't know that she is a girl. Um, and these rich kids are just this rich kid is just bullying her. She goes to this host club. She breaks the vase, and she has to pay for it. And as she's working her debt off, one of the girls that go to this school bully her, and basically just keep taking jabs at her, saying that she doesn't belong here, trying to put her in her place. And I was just so pissed watching. It's like one of those like shout at the TV moments, right? And I was just so pissed for her. Like, oh, like, you don't deserve that. Like, she's like, whatever. And I was surprised that she had held it in the whole time. And she gets to a point in the episode where she meets with the girl, and she's like, oh, I get it. And she's just very calm. And she says, you're jealous of me. And the girl like fakes Haruhi attacking her, and she tries to get everybody to gang up on Haruhi because she just, in my interpretation, she just couldn't handle somebody of like a lower class, I guess, telling her like it is, and I tell you, if that episode had gone a different way, I might have had just turned it off. But once Haruhi had called her out, the supporting cast, right? Um, they take Haruhi's side, and they're like, "Oh, your behavior was not acceptable, and this and that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like they see her, they see the situation. It's not completely lost or missed upon like a certain population. They're able to say that like that was wrong. So I said, okay, I'm gonna give this a shot because I feel like justice is so I continued watching, and there was more little lessons that had popped up throughout the episodes, and it seems so small. Like it seems so small, just like defending somebody, or or like finessing these people to just try to fit in in this like world that she's now a part of. And I really thought about it as I was going through stuff, and I'm like, well, really, that's like what it is. Like, we're just trying to get through our work life or our relationships by trying to finesse the system, because sometimes you just have to, right? And try to have fun along the way doing it. So after finding Oron, I had binged it, and I had really watched certain episodes over and over again um, during some low points, because there were certain lessons in certain episodes that kind of resonated with me at that time. And it really calmed me down, like it calmed me down, and it made me think that, like, hey, this creator was able to create these scenarios thinking that if this person acts like this, then others would receive them like this. And it's normal to feel this way. It's normal to feel wronged. And just knowing that the creator um, could kind of, or that wanted to, I guess, just knowing that the creator wanted to put these like emotions out there and show that, hey, these kinds of feelings exist when you treat people this way. I felt that maybe I'm not so far off in feeling wronged, right? There's other people that can put two and two together. So maybe I'm not the wrong one, you know? Um, and that kind of gave me the momentum to keep pushing forward and kind of like put on my big girl pants and walk back into the office and be like, oh, hell no. You know?
You and I are very similar in that I think we're both, we have introverted qualities. We're both very agreeable, but also very empathetic and introspective. We see the world and we take everything in and we think about and let things almost stew and eat us up on the inside. So just kind of hearing a very similar or feeling very similarly to how you experience, someone in the workplace or just any environment kind of getting their way when and then the onus being put back on the people who are most empathetic to kind of suck it up, as opposed to telling that person or calling that person out who needs to be called out. And then finding Oran. And it's just a very similar anime story for a lot of people like us, where we can't make sense of the world, right? Where we hope that we have a moral compass that's guiding us. We hope that we're doing the right thing, and yet we see essentially people doing the wrong thing being rewarded time and time again, and it causes a lot of anxiety, it causes a lot of stress. But I think the way that you described Oran's story so beautifully depicts the fact that yes, it happens. Yes, it's character building, but also there is a sense of justice in the fact that being a good person still works, and that hopefully there are enough good people in the world to at least passively see what's happening in that situation that you explained, and kind of noticing like, yeah, that's not it. That's not right. And at least in that sense, getting the sense of justice. So, no, I think it was a very beautiful way that you connected that with your real life, because I think I'm not sure if we were there at the same time for a lot of those situations, because we did experience very similar things when we worked together. And I very much remember a myriad of times where that happened as well, where you had the prototypical aggressive, work-minded person getting their way, but you knew it was wrong, and you knew in the long term that's not sustainable, and yet those were the solutions that the company or companies or stakeholders wanted, and you knew it was wrong, but you kind of had to keep pushing it through. So long-winded way of saying anime is an escape from a lot of the crappiness of the world, but also finding out that there is still good in being a good person. So we met through work, through just a very immediate sense of, oh, you like anime, me too. You like video games, me too. And then we just became friends for ever since. Like I said, it's going on 10 years now, maybe over 10 years. But then a lot of our friendship really blossomed in the time that we were outside of work, because we hung out we hung at your house mostly, playing video games, watching anime, and then we went to anime conventions. Um,
Yes.
Fanime being the home base for us every single year. You have a storied history with Fanime. Um, Take me through the first time you went to Fanime, and then how it's evolved over time. Different touch points, different
Oh,
checkpoints that
oh boy.
have really shaped you into the kind of person you are with your fandom.
Gosh. So, I first went to Fanime, I think in the early 2000s. Um, my boyfriend actually was the manager at GameStop in San Jose. And one day while I was visiting, we're like, oh my gosh, we saw all these cosplayers. I didn't know what cosplay was yet. Okay, so let me say that. I did not know what cosplay was. And I thought it was so cool. So, and I think that's a testament to how open-minded and how willing to dive into fandom that I was, because a lot of times when people see people in costumes, that is not the reaction, right? Like the reaction is like, "Oh my God, like why does she have cat ears on?" You know? Like, what is that? But no, for me, I was like, "Oh my God, where did you get your cat ears?" You know? And then we had kind of followed the trail, and it was Fanime. Um, so we decided to buy our tickets, and at that time, so I know that you've gone year after year. At that time, the badges were just printed on little slips of paper and shoved in the little ID holder. And I don't know, but I remember getting my badge and I just felt so legit. Like I'm like, I'm here. I'm at a thing. I'm doing a thing, you know?
It's like when you start a
And
new game and you start the first quest and you're like, I'm part of this world now.
yeah, and so I was just there, and again, a little bit about me. I never shared my fandom or my fangirling with anybody except for that was the first, or this is the first relationship where I had shared my fandom with anyone. I was kind of like a I don't know what I would categorize myself as, but it wasn't anime. It was just something else that I definitely not anymore. So I showed up there and I was just like geeking out, completely geeking out. And I for a second I really thought that my boyfriend at the time was going to just leave. I was like
Like,
he's
sorry,
gonna
I've
leave me.
lost you to the
Yeah.
convention floor.
Yeah, he's like, this was false advertising. I did not know that this is what I was gonna get when I committed, you know? And and so I just started geeking out because I don't care. Like at this point, like there's no stopping me. I was too deep. And I remember seeing everybody just unafraid. Unafraid and excited. And I say unafraid because I just never had seen anybody um like dressed and so confident in what they were wearing and how they were posing. It's like everybody exuded confidence. And I don't mean to be like stereotypical, but like there were people that looked like quote unquote nerds that were just like owning it, you know? And like for me, I was like, how do I get to that point? How do I get to be like you? I was just like in awe. I didn't have like a lot of confidence, like let alone to even share like what I liked with somebody else. Um, and here there's like these nerds, right? That were just like freaking yelling catchphrases, like to like the top of their lungs and stuff. And I just really thought that it was so cool. And no one was judging them. Like there was nobody like, whispering or like, "Oh my God, like what is that?" It was just the welcoming environment and just so cool. So, I was sold at that point, and every year after that, like I would keep going to the point where like actually I've only missed the these past 2 years, because of the COVID shutdown, right, and like the city ordinances. But every year it's been a ritual to go pack my cooler in the car so I don't have to pay for the convention food and stay there for 4 days. My family's gone. Obviously, we met and we became friends, and you came with us. I was pregnant with my daughter at Fanime, and my water broke. 2009, if you were there, if you helped out, thank you. but yeah, my whole life is, well, more than half my life is with Fanime now than it's been without. So um it's just been such a release and a relief each year to be able to celebrate and hang out with everybody there and just get this like sensory stimulation and share the love of anime with everyone.
Anime conventions, Fanime in particular, the first time I ever went, it felt like the first steps into a bigger world where I didn't know people could just be so freely celebrating what we have pretty much grown up with online. We grew up with a time without internet, but then when the internet did come around, that was the primary source of how we either got our media or was able to adjacently talk about it. Initial days of Twitter, initial days of forum, initial days of Reddit, notwithstanding all of those like very nebulous ways of trying to find a community, trying to find a home and celebrate and talk to strangers about things. For me, it didn't work out that great, but I attempted, I tried. But then seeing it happen in real life, like you said, it is a little overstimulating at first, but once you kind of calm down to your environment and you kind of see everyone, essentially being themselves while also being other people, has this very quirky contradiction to it, right? Where I think it's very sweet and charming that the best way to be yourself, to express yourself, is actually to kind of hide behind a costume in a lot of ways. I've read a number of psychology papers and essays on like the effects of masks during conventions and things like that. I can't name them right now. It's been so long, but essentially this idea of forming your identity and finding comfort in a community while also hiding a version of yourself, because that version of yourself has this psychological baggage. Sorry, this is not Psych Corner. I'm not qualified.
No, but it ties in, right? There's so many areas of psychology and just life and mental health that anime can help heal. I think. Again, not a psychologist either, but just speaking from my own experience, anime has always been constant in my life, like a constant support or an outlet. But I didn't realize what kind of support and what kind of outlet until I actually experienced life and grew up. Then I kind of like awakened, if you will, and realized that, oh crap, anime has always been this unconditional support for me. I'm using anime this way. And I wouldn't have put that together if I hadn't experienced the experiences that I had in conjunction to watching and hearing and experiencing these stories from anime. But one thing that I do want to point out, you said that your first time at the convention, it was like very like sensory overload and like overstimulated. When I first went to Fanime, my first convention ever, I felt for a split second, longer than a split second, but my first steps in, I felt like I didn't belong because there were so many characters and things going on that I didn't know what they were. So I felt this like, I can't be here because I don't know enough, you know? And I kind of felt bad because it was like, oh my gosh, these people are so into the scene that they can call on this mangaka or this like illustrator, this anime, this publisher, this blah, 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 blah. They can formulate these thoughts and these synthesis where I'm just here like, hey, Pokemon. You know what I mean? And I felt like me being there was almost insulting, right? Because I didn't know enough to be there. Um, and that quickly went away. So as I had spent more time there, like the minutes, the hours, and then the days, I realized that I'm the only one judging myself right now. Nobody knows what I've watched. Nobody's looking at my purchases. Nobody's saying anything to me. I'm just creating these issues, of judgment because that's what I'm used to, right? Um, and so when I had taken my nieces and nephews, because I said, oh, like cool aunt, right? Like, let's go here. Um, I know that they had similar feelings at first. Like they didn't know who people were cosplayed as, and it kind of made them feel like a certain way. So if anybody is thinking about going to a con for the first time and they have those kind of jitters of like, I can't sit here because I don't know enough. You can sit there. There's no meter or anime measuring tape that people use to say that you're worthy or unworthy of experiencing the fandom. And you had mentioned at the beginning about the like the Star Wars fandoms or like Marvel fandoms where they're like, no, people banter back and forth and say that like you're wrong, I'm right, whatever. Every fandom has that. You'll find it in the anime fandom too, that people will be like, well, your theory is wrong or your opinion is wrong. If you don't want to argue, you don't have to. You can step back. I've fallen in that hole too, and I just like get so pissed at reading some things, and I'm like, you know what? Why am I here? Like this is not. I went too far. I went too far in the beyond. Let me pull back to the bed and bath, and we're just gonna sit right here because um, you don't have to make time for things that you don't want to make time for. So if you ever encounter anything that is negative within the anime community, just close your window, turn around, and go look at some fan art. You know what I mean?
And I think that also translates into just every fandom. Well, not every, a lot of fandoms, right? The majority of fandoms, whether
Mhm.
that's anime, comic book heroes, comic book movies, K-pop, it, and I think it all loops back into this initial entrance into a lot of these worlds, right?
Mhm.
Especially in the real world, especially at a convention. We do. I got a sense of imposter syndrome as well, where I
Mhm.
didn't know 90% of the things that I saw on the convention floor, but I just sucked it up. I just kept walking until I found something I recognized. And then when I had that one first conversation with a real person and they weren't so scary, then you start to settle down when you're in the real world. And again, I draw this comparison all the time. We've spent so much of our lives on the internet, um, throughout our life with anime, video games, everything. And then it's been heightened so much more during the pandemic where that's the only place anyone can go to. I do think, yes, part of it is COVID fatigue, but also I think people really do just need to see other people in real life again and,
Yes.
kind of get that immediate feedback of talking to a person, even if you disagree, even if you have a debate you want to have. I think people are more
Mhm.
likely to rein it in when they could read physical and social cues of another person, instead of being so aggressive, or bordering on toxic like behavior. I don't ever want to call someone toxic because sometimes they don't know. Sometimes they're going through some stuff too.
Yeah,
But at the same
for
time,
sure.
if it looks a certain way, it feels a certain way, it might be a certain way. Um, with all that being said, we all do come into any space with baggage. With anime, we've all grown up with it in a different way. Some people have had access to it in a myriad in a much more deeper way than you or I. And that's okay because that's their experience. And I think your experience speaks volumes to um, a lifetime of trying to find not just the stories that resonate with you most, but also find the stories that help you identify and form who you are as a person. And I can tell you, the person that you are is a very great person and a very fantastically well spoken person. To kind of wrap up, this conversation and just everything that has to do with anime and just conventions, what are you hopeful for as we start to get back into the real world and starting to see real people? And how do you feel like the lessons you've taken over the past 2 years will translate or grow or evolve with your anime experience?
Gosh, I I don't know what normal is anymore. That's kind of like what I that's my go-to to say, like, I wish things were back to normal. But I don't know what that looks like. I would like to be able to gather and celebrate anime again, like we had in the past, with like a group of people, happy, super putting effort into their costumes and then taking pictures and then running up to everybody and like, oh my gosh, I love your costume. Like, that kind of love and supportive environment, I wish. Oh, plus the sensory overload. I really love the sensory overload, right? Like when you have so much to look at and you don't even have to spend money. You're just, it's free, right? Um, I I really would like to get back to that point where we can all collectively enjoy one another's company and creations again. So I don't know when that will be, but I hope to get I hope to get to that point. In the past 2 years, gosh, like even the way that I've consumed anime has been different through COVID. Watching animes, I kind of became dependent. Like, I hope that this anime better be good. Like, my expectations are like way too high because there's no other way to get stimulation from inside your house, right? So you're like, okay, Attack on Titan, I'm looking at you. This better be good, Um, and they delivered. They delivered. For the record, right? I was I was satisfied. Um, but the past 2 years, yeah, like I could not consume anime the same way as an like avid anime enthusiast because of all the things that were happening around me. So it's like my like things that were my favorite got sullied by the angst of staying at home or whatever I was dealing with other people or somebody's opinion that might have come off the wrong way through text. So I can't say that anime has had a big influence during COVID, more so that I probably haven't been the best consumer um, of anime during this past two years. I wasn't a good audience. I and not that I mistreated it, but I think that my expectations and how I've received the message and all this stuff, the message and the storylines maybe have been heightened or or lacked what the anime really was worth. Maybe um, I didn't give credit where it was due enough. So now that things are opening back up and I'm starting to rewatch things again or get back into the groove of things, I feel more level headed, as a person and as a consumer of anime, where I feel like I can really enjoy now without having to deal with all this baggage, as you say.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes you just miss something, right? Where you watch a show and it doesn't hit you until maybe half a year, 2 years down the line, and you see something that reminds you of a moment, and you figure out the lesson so much further
Yep.
down the line than in that immediate time of seeing it. I feel like that's the case with so much that's happened over the past 2 years, where it's been such a blur. It's We can
Yeah.
legitimately say 2 years now, coming up on it in March,
Yeah,
which is
I
wild.
know. Oh my god.
Um, and I get, well, I'm trying to like piece this together. So I loved Demon Slayer, but I too responded a certain way when I would see on message boards, on Twitter, just random things of people critiquing the show, not necessarily of the quality of the show or anything that's happening with the show, but the fact that it's so popular. Of course, they're making money off of it. It's like, that's what you took from the show. And then and then that affects me, right? And then I think for me, what I've
Yep.
learned over the past 2 years is trying my best to separate myself from how someone else wants to live in that lane, live in their world, and detach and realize that has zero to no effect on my experience and what I'm taking away from the show, this movie, whether it's anime, whether it's something else. Because we've had so much media over the past 2 years. That's one thing that hasn't stopped, thankfully. And I feel like I want to take that into the real world because, again, I think a lot of the way people talk about things very combatively has also been heightened
Mhm.
because that's the only place people can go to congregate. And I hope, my hope is that as the world opens up, people can settle down just a little bit. I know I sound like an old person, get off my porch, but even me, I do probably need to settle down a little bit. But I'm also seeing a lot of real people a lot recently, so I'm feeling really good about spending time on the internet in a different way. And that's kind of what I hope for as well, as far as moving forward with anime and with any fandom, where I can utilize my time online as a way to enhance my experience instead of looking for ways to either challenge myself, because not everything has to be a challenge. It can always just be a ride
Yeah.
to experience. Yeah. No. Abby, this was an amazing conversation. I appreciate you coming on and telling a lot about your life story and just what you've gone through with anime over the years. And it's been really eye opening. And I hope people can gain perspective and kind of put themselves in your shoes and your experiences as to what their anime experience means to them. Before we head out, I'd like to ask you, what is one anime or manga recommendation you have for everyone?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I might be late to the party here, but I just finished Tokyo Revengers and please watch it. Please watch it or read it. Actually, I'm going to start reading it. They show it on Crunchyroll, and basically, it's about this guy who had his peak in middle school. So he was the shit in middle school, and then he grew up and he's like just this loser. And he learns one day that his ex-girlfriend has passed away, and he just starts lamenting his life, like, what did I do, why did her life get taken and not mine, kind of deal. And somehow he learns that he can time travel, and he time travels to try to save her or to try to correct events leading up to her death so that she doesn't, there's a future where she does exist. But these corrections come in the form of him making adjustments to gang life in Tokyo. It's a plot that it's like a time travel gangster. Like, I've never seen a storyline like it. And I thought that it would be one of those animes that I could just like watch like onesies, twosies, right? But I ended up binging it, and thank God too that I didn't watch it as it was simulcasted because I don't think I would have been able to hang. But it's really good. It's really good. So I recommend Tokyo Revengers.
Yeah, that's one I've had on my list for so long, but I've been told that it's one that you need to finish all the way through. It's like, oh, do I have an afternoon? Do I have a weekend? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, so a lot of anxiety on my end, but yes, I will get to that eventually. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about it on the show. Wink, wink.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Well, again, thank you for this amazing conversation, this amazing peek into your life. Where can people find you? What is your handle that you'd like to share with everyone?
Oh my gosh. So I'm so not on social media or anywhere. But actually, if you are going to look for me, I'm on Twitter at Sugar Shuriken, sugar without the A, and then Shuriken. You can come and share some opinions and funny cat pictures with me there.
Yeah. You're very active when convention season happens. We have not had a convention season, so that is probably the reason why the activity level has dipped. But I think we're gonna slowly have one again. So yeah, everyone check out her Twitter account. She says a lot of interesting things about cats and stuff. So it is all very good.
And random anime stuff, yeah. So stop by. Maybe it will encourage me to post more.
Yeah. Yeah, get connected. We all just need some connection in our lives. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening to the Nerdverse Adventures. Follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe on YouTube. You can find the show on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at the Nerdverse Adventures. For Abby, this is Anton, and this has been the Nerdverse Adventures.